controversial. Myself, Rav Jor, and Rod Reuven Bryant. So tonight for us here in Israel, and today for Rod across the ocean, we are going to be discussing the idea, why is it that those who should love us hate us? And so I was thinking about that when Rav Jor talked to me about this subject, and he sent me a few postings of some people, and obviously a couple of them were Muslims that were very vocal about their feelings and their feelings of hatred towards Israel and towards the Jewish people. It's always a very interesting subject for me. Why? Because when you think about it, when you think about Islam in general, if you look at Islam purely as the Islamic religion, and you look at it purely from the concept of the Quran, and you compare it to the Torah, there are certain things that overlap. So, for instance, there's no question that they accept the idea of Avraham, and so we know for us as Jewish people that we call him Avraham Avinu, Abraham our father, and he was the first person that looked sort of to nature and to the world and recognized that there had to be a creator, and he's sort of the father of Avraham as well. Now the story for them is a little bit different, but according to the Torah, in Breshit, in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, it says that in Abraham, in Avraham, that all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, that those who bless you shall be blessed, and those who curse you shall be cursed. That alone should give people pause. And this is regardless of whether or not we're talking about somebody who's Muslim, somebody who's Christian, somebody who's even Jewish. It should give you pause that when the Creator says that in you all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, and the idea that those who bless you shall be blessed and those who curse you shall be cursed, that should give you pause to sit back and say, well, wait a minute, maybe I need to think about this, or maybe I need to rethink this. So one of the things that I believe that this comes down to, and I think that even Jewish people sometimes struggle with this concept. And when I say Jewish people, I'm talking about people that are not necessarily observant. Let's say people that are, may recognize Hashem, may recognize God as the creator, but, not so much that they follow the Torah or follow the halakha, the laws. But they sort of recognize that at least they're chosen. They consider themselves the chosen people. One of the things that's interesting when you start talking about Islam and you go back to the idea of some of the like early attacks on the Jewish people, going back to Pharaoh, going back to even Amalek, I think it's very interesting that one of the main things in my studies on Amalek is the idea that I believe in a spiritual sense, one of the main things that Amalek tried to do was he tried to get the Jewish people to question their chosenness. In other words, he introduced doubt to them. And what's interesting from a Kabbalistic standpoint is that when we look at Gematria, which is numerology, the word safek, which is the Hebrew word for doubt, has the same Gematria as Amalek. So this idea of Amalek trying to cause the Jewish people to question their chosenness. So think about it. If the Jewish people are questioning their chosenness, then of course there are going to be the rest of the world and the rest of the nations questioning chosenness. Now, to get into specifics, a lot of the things that you see coming out of Islam, and specifically radical Muslims or Muslims that really show an incredible amount of hatred to the Jewish people, typically do the same things when I talk about these overlaps between Islam and the Torah. So let's look at some of the overlaps between, let's say, Islam and Christianity. Now, some people, Christians, would say, oh, there's no overlap. But when you look at the things that are produced, put out there by Muslims to promote hatred, it's usually the Quran being presented out of context. The same way that Christians will often present things from the Tanakh or from their own writings out of context. In other words, taking single verses and saying, oh, look what this says. So, for instance, one of the things that you sent me, Achi, was this idea of there's a hadith, and a hadith is not specifically purely from the Quran, and that hadith talks about the end of times, and Muslims use this all the time in their videos, radicalized Muslims, this idea of, oh, there's the trees and the rocks will cry out, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him. Okay? This is a hadith, and a hadith is really a narrative or an interpretation of something that might be in the Quran. When you look at the pure teachings of the Quran and you look at the pure teachings of the Quran related to Israel and the Jewish people, it actually supports the notion that the nation, that the land of Israel was given to the Jewish people, that the Jewish people were blessed. It even supports the idea of the building of the first and second temple, which is amazing to me, because you had people like Yasser Arafat and all of these people that produced so much hatred towards the Jewish people, denying those things. They even said, the leaders of the Fakistinians would say, oh, there's not one stone anywhere in Jerusalem that shows the history of the Jewish people there. And yet their own Quran talks about Shlomo HaMelech building the temple. It talks about the Jewish people going to Babylon. It talks about the Jewish people being ransomed by a Persian king and being able to go back to Jerusalem and building a second temple. So all of those things, when you put it together, you have to ask the question, why is it that those who should love us hate us?
Rod?
Very well stated. Listen, we live in a country here that it's not as pronounced as you guys have in Jerusalem, in Israel. I mean, look, just a few days ago, the mosque shooting, and what a crying shame. And we've had our experiences. It's so heavy, the discontent and hatred by a segment of Muslims. But I have Muslim friends here in this community. One of them born and raised in Ramallah. All I can say is, I would just say, Habibi, understand we're not here to bust on Muslims or to say all Muslims are horrible people, but this hatred goes beyond anything that I can comprehend. And most of it obviously is misdirected, and there needs to be an education. But I wonder, and this is a thing I'd like to refer back to you, Rob Dror or Rob Michelson. At some level, I wonder if this did not come as a direction from Sinai to keep the Jewish people with free choice and the ability to know that there's going to be a battle to cling to Torah and to cling to their understanding of Hashem. And that at some level, this is just the total opposite of what we would like in the world. But at the same time, this is to kind of keep the pious people of the world in check. I don't know. What's your thought on that, Rob?
I think that the main reason why people can fall even into that debate to question the Jewish people and to question their mission on earth, after believing in the truthfulness of the Bible, of the 5 books that were given by Moshe to the people of Israel and the holy tablets from Mount Sinai, even just with that simple beginner fundamental faith in the Bible, in the 5 books of Moshe, you cannot contradict the goodness and the importance and greatness of the people of Israel. Now,
right.
The problem begins when people are just not feeling committed to the truth anymore. and then they
Right.
can use
Right.
the social media and the newspapers like 50 and 60 years ago when newspapers were still important, and people would use the media to pull the opinions of people, of their viewers, of their followers, to their opinions without being loyal to the truth anymore. And then you can say things like there is no rock in Jerusalem that will prove that the Jewish people ever lived there. It's like it's a complete lie. Like you have
Right.
millions of evidence for the Jewish history in Yerushalayim. When you walk around the Western Wall, you see all the archaeological treasures that are being found over there. You can see layers after layers, the destructions, and like in to the exact dates by science, by people who are investigate from a secular point of view, and finding the ashes of the fire from the great fire that took place in the time of destruction. And it's like, yeah, 2,000 years ago, and on and on and on and on. So like when a person is not committed to the truth anymore, and so he can make up as many lies as he wants, and he will support and promote his agenda and his selfish desire for his own imaginary success, even by destroying and sabotaging the foundations that their own ancestors were supporting and promoting. 800 years ago and even 500 years ago, there was so much honor between the Jewish people and the religious Muslims in the world, and also in Christianity. Even though that the history is full of bloodsheds and a lot of chasings and false blamings, there was still a lot of honor in many debates, and many conversations that took place in the past were based on true search for the truth. There were real Christian people who were really believing in their method and were really arguing and trying to find the truth in great debates and public debates with Jewish rabbis. And when the truth was proving itself, so the truth was accepted, even on stages that were like of Christians, and the Christian priests were embarrassed to hear those truths. But in many situations, and we have many books and many letters and many protocols of those conversations and public debates, they were accepting the truth and they were open-minded to hear it. So when people were still loyal to the truth, so truths that are clear and cannot be denied, were accepted. But today, that people are not so committed to the truth, and the truth is only a flag to wave, to pull more attraction and to bring more followers to your page by claiming to be a truth seeker, then lie can spread around, and all kinds of rumors and false and fake news can appear on every topic and every matter.
So one of the things that I find, and I always sort of default back to this word all the time, this idea of identity. When we think about the discussions that we've had here, we go back to the idea of, let's say, the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, and we talk about anti-Semitism. One of the things that I find is very common in people that hate the Jewish people is that they themselves lack an identity. When you talk about you always hear me use terms like Fakistinians or Pseudostinians. Why do I call them that? Because I won't recognize something that I think is, to use your word, imaginary. It's something that's imaginary. It's something that came up as a modern invention. There was no such thing as such a people. They have no culture. They have no language. These are Arab peoples. But when you think about it, what identity do they have? At one time they held Jordanian passports. There's no question that they're Aravim. They're Arabs. Nobody questions that. There are different Arab people groups. Now, I can show you that when you know the truth and when you know who you are, I'll give you a perfect example. The family that has adopted us here in Sfat, the Air family, are here 7 generations in Sfat. They're here almost 400 years from Persia. In 1948, when the Arabs attacked, when there was the War of Independence, and the Arabs in Sfat attacked the Jewish people, the Mufti of Tzfat, the head leader of the Muslim people
Yep.
here, hid the Yair family in his basement of his house. While his own people were attacking the Jews, he was hiding this family in his basement. Why? Because he knew who he was. He knew who he was. He knew what the Quran taught. He knew that this was a blessed people. He knew that the Creator had given them the land. And so, because he knew who he was and he knew what the truth was, he was willing to do what needed to be done. At the end of the day, for me, it comes back to that idea. I think that this idea of a lack of identity causes people to latch on to things that are half truths, quarter truths, contain no truth whatsoever. And typically, what ends up happening is that when you don't have an identity and you try to latch on to those things, you typically will then look for somebody to use as a scapegoat or somebody to use as a whipping post in order to raise up your agenda or raise up your identity to make you feel better about yourself. That's one of the things that I see in this discussion.
Well, it's interesting because I've asked myself, what is the proper question to ask, and it's so complex. This idea of why do people have such dislike for the Jewish people, and this has been since the very beginning. And I mean, I'm sure part of it's cultural, part of it is a lack of sort of a proper perspective in life, spiritual perspective. You said it spot on. Are they people that love the truth? And this is the reason why that there are many Christians and Muslims who have had their minds changed because of the beauty of Torah and knowing exactly what God says. And while others stay trapped in this illusion that they are completely right and that the Jewish people are what ails them. And I'm not sure that that can be changed unless there's some strong psychotherapy that needs to go on with people, because how do you change the mind of somebody who's a victim all the time? That's a very difficult thing. I mean, the problem exists is so deeply rooted. I'm not sure that we can somehow resolve this, but at the same time, I sure would like at the end for someone who's going to listen to this, who might have some sort of anti-Semitic feelings, would check themselves, would ask themselves, why? Why do I feel this way? I'm the person on the outside in this group, in the sense that I came from Christianity. I was a Christian pastor of a successful church. Over the years, obviously born and raised, it didn't cross my mind, and never even conceived of Judaism or Israel, except in reading one of the stories from what they call the Old Testament. And now here I am sitting here with you as one who is a fully observant Noahide, who believes in Torah, who believes in Israel. And I really do believe the elixir for all of this is to start educating people. That's what Nativ does, is we educate people to teach them what the Torah says and have them have a fertile environment to make a right decision. And many people are changing their mind, but it's not enough as far as I'm concerned.
You have some billions of people that are waiting for that education. I think that we need to remember the verse, "Ve'ahavta l'racha kamocha," you should love your neighbor as you love yourself. And really, the verse is putting us in a kind of a problematic situation. Why? because the obligation to love someone is based on how much you're going to love yourself. So it means that the righteous person who will love his neighbor tremendously, person that has a very high level of self-esteem, that he really appreciates himself, that he cares for himself as well. He finds his own goodness within him, and therefore he is able to love others. The verse is saying you should love your neighbor as you love yourself. So people who are hating others, I think that the beginning is because they're hating themselves.
They hate
Or
themselves,
else,
right?
self-hatred, I think it's like a horrible plague, a disease that begins with self-criticism and self-blaming and broken self-esteems and growing up in horrible environments. Like I read a testament of in a police investigation of a Palestinian murderer and a rapist who raped in a horrible, cruel way and murdered while raping a 19 years old girl a couple of years ago. And in his horrible, horrific testament on what he did and how he did it, he said that he was very happy and that he did that horrible thing. And while doing it, he accomplished the dream of any Arab person. Like he said, you don't understand us. That's the dream of any Arab person. And that's a complete lie. That's a lie that horrible person is telling himself and thinking, imagining to himself as if the whole Arab world is supporting his own mental sickness. This is a complete sick, wicked entity that in her illusions imagine that all the Arab world is a Jew haters that wants to kill and rape and abuse Jewish men and women in any possible way. So like you see that the lie and the sickness, the mental sickness, is bringing people to those horrible behaviors. And when they are like exposed to social media, they can like also like make videos and create agendas and fake profiles with fake news and with edited videos and promoting their lie out to the world and expanding the lie and hatred for the Jewish people, when really it's only their own mental sickness and craziness for hating themselves, for having horrible life and just being weak and low lives creatures.
I get what you're saying, but on the other hand, and I'm not arguing that point. When we had the attack here the other day, we had a terrorist attack here in Israel, and these holy neshamot, these holy souls were killed. And I was talking to my wife about this, and after we mourn as this single entity, the Jewish people, that when one of us is goes through this, it's like our heart hurts and we all mourn together and we cry over this. And then you say to yourself, what is it that you have people who educate their children in this way? Because it's not just, for sure, social media is not helpful in this. And the idea that it's so easy to disseminate this sort of information. But I said to my wife, our chayalim, our soldiers, God forbid that anything should happen to our wonderful soldiers here in the IDF. But it's not like you can say, oh, we're attacking, this is a war. And so, like in a typical war when it's soldiers against soldiers, these are people that are coming and they're being educated in this way, not just on social media, but in their villages, in their towns, their leaders, their sheiks, their parents are teaching them this hatred. And then they go out and kill innocent people. This is the thing that have such a hard time wrapping my mind around. That we have gotten to this point that where you can say, okay, I feel like I've been wronged. I feel like the land has been stolen from my family, whatever. But to go out and to do these kind of things, to kill innocent people, to go and kill people that are literally worshiping God, you're claiming that you're God-fearing people, and that you're, I just don't get it. I mean, this is the thing that I can't wrap my mind around in this whole thing.
It's mental sickness. Like it's definitely the effect of the teachers and the ones who are brainwashing their communities into that false hatred, are definitely affecting and increasing the hatred. But I don't think that a person that is healthy in his mind would be pushed to such horrible place and to act in such a horrible way. I think that you have people that has more soul within them that makes them holier, and by that wiser, brighter, and with better attributes, and more feeling more attached to kindness, to mercy, to love, to honor, to respect. And you have people that barely has soul and maybe does not have even a spark of a soul, only some kind of shallow energy in aspect of spirit, or kind of inner fog that holds some kind of life essence within them, but definitely not a godly soul. And those shallow animals in shape of human beings are open for hatred in their nature. And when it's coming and being shoved and pushed into their brains, into their minds, into their empty skulls, so they're just like in great thirst, proudly wanting to kill and to die for their fake imaginary goal, to kill a Jew, such a goal. People, I like if you would read the midrashim, the ancient scripts, and you would know what's the doom and judgment of Israel haters. Like Ira, you mentioned the verse Mevarchecha Avarech and Mekalelecha Or, I will bless the ones who will bless you and curse the one who curses you. Just to understand to which place of eternal punishment and darkness and pain they are like decreeing on themselves, the peak of sorrow, eternal sorrow. They're sending themselves and their children and their loved ones to the most horrific, painful places, just for fighting with the children of Israel, just for fighting with the chosen people of Hashem, the ones that He chose to be the light to the nations, to build the temples, to shine the light of Torah to the world, light of faith, to be the ones who continues the light and love and spreading it all around. To fight with them, it's to fight with the maker of the universe. There is no mistake that will be like more stupid than that. Like it's the most idiotic thing to do.
People would realize what it's costing them. Maybe they would consider the change. The bombing that took place in August of 2001 at Sbaros in Jerusalem, that woman now lives in Jordan. I won't even mention her name. She still to this day brags about she wished she could have done more than kill 15 innocent people on the street in that bus. And we have to, and I think you said it right. It's a mental illness. I really do feel bad that Islam has been co-opted in such a way that it's twisted the scriptures, twisted the Quran in such a way that it breeds this kind of thinking, this mentality. And you said something very important, and that is what they don't realize. The more they hate, the more they resent, the more they want to murder, they're only going to be fulfilling damnation in themselves. They won't succeed. They're not going to succeed with that type of attitude in life. And so what happens is they get lower and lower and lower, and finally they degenerate into some horrible behavior. And I pray that any Muslim that would be watching, and I know that there are Muslims who are watching this, and who and in many aspects support Israel and love you, Rob Dror, and love you, Ira Michelson. I'm just saying, please be a voice of reason to your people. Be a voice of love and compassion. I know that love and compassion are not foreign terms to Muslims. It's not a foreign term. It's a term very well embraced amongst their own people. But this baseless hatred for anyone, forget about the Jewish people, baseless hatred toward anybody is only a ticket for failure, psychological, spiritual, and financial failure. If you want to change things, change your outlook, change the way you approach things in life. And God willing, maybe someone will be encouraged. You're not going to change the world, but change yourself. And that's what I hope, that Muslims around the world would finally realize this is not very productive. I think we're seeing that change somewhat, at least in the West. I'm not sure, and they'll be like we're in the Mideast, but most definitely in the West, there is a slight shift of the way Muslims are, especially the moderate people that are religious, that are being emboldened to speak up and be light instead of darkness. And that's what we can only hope for, because redemption depends on that.
So I have a quick question before we run out of time, because we've been focusing on Islam, but the question of, we just touched lightly on it, this idea of Christianity. A lot of Christians will say, yeah, but that's not real Christians. Real Christians love Israel and love the Jewish people. But the first time that Christian who loves the Jewish people in Israel stands in front of you and says, why won't you accept Jesus? And you give them a reason, then suddenly their whole demeanor changes, and suddenly this hatred comes out. So I don't know, maybe Rod, maybe it might, from your background, maybe it might be easier for you to answer that question than Rav Dror. I don't know, but I want to kind of touch on that, and not, because there's not just
right
Muslims. So,
well, first of all, that's not even in my wheelhouse, because I never experienced that, because I was evangelical Christian,
right.
And most evangelicals are big supporters of Israel. And I would say the majority of evangelicals don't have this need to feel that a Jew needs to convert to Christianity. It's just not in that might be in the back of their mind, but it's not a thing that changes. However, there is a select group of people that are part of the Christian worldwide movement that vary. It's on a spectrum from absolute anti-Semitism, and I can point it out. I know the people that preach on YouTube, vitriol and hatred. They actually are using artwork from, look like posters from 1930s in Germany to describe the Jewish people. Like, it just boggles the mind. However, I would think that if you really thought the Jewish people need to be, quote, saved to accept your way of life, that for sure would not be the way you should approach it. It should be approached in another way. And maybe that's why so many Christians are trying to be so kind and work in the fields and picking olives and fruit. Maybe they're feeling out, we'll win them over by our kindness. But once again, what will solve that is education. We have got to help these Christian people that are good people, the ones that are pious, righteous people, to embrace knowledge of truth. Truth will always win out. But just, we've got to be consistent and not lose heart in the whole matter.
Amen. Thank you so much, guys.
So before we go, Rod, we were able to put.
Wow, that's
there we go. Didn't want to block you guys out. So Rod, maybe you tell us a little bit about this.
Well, first of all, is that big enough? I'm not sure.
I didn't make it.
It looks like a banner on the side of the freeway. Nativonline.org. That's the place to go for all people who are searching for an understanding of a Torah perspective for the non-Jewish people. There is a place in the world to come for all people who embrace the love of one God and embrace the Sheva Mitzvot, the 7 mitzvahs that God gave to Noach. And there are thousands of people across the world who are embracing this and experiencing it, attending classes, watching videos, etc. And I want to thank Ira first for your mentorship and patience with me in the early years of leaving Christianity to embrace Torah Judaism, and also for Rav Dror for your graciousness to allow me to be around and to see you and to experience this emunah that you've been teaching about for so many years. So if you want to know more about us, go to nativonline.org.
Rav Dror?
Thank you. Thank you so much. So Emunah.com, it's our website. Over there you can see thousands of lectures on great inspirational topics, mainly and by our friends that are helping us to spread faith around the world. We have a great store with amazing books and children books and other products and services as well. As a nonprofit organization, we are offering great services for the public. If it's consultations, conversations, if it's to join our Emunah Circle group of friends who are learning 3 live classes a week, and as well enjoying a WhatsApp chat and many, many other services that you can find. And like I mentioned, the books, Return to Your Root, and other great books that reflecting great inner connection to the Maker based on true search of the person himself, and with great findings after reading.
Amen. If you'd like to know a little bit about Kabbalah and how science and Kabbalah meet, this is my book, The Science of Kabbalah. You can get on Amazon. You can also learn more about Kabbalah if you want on my website at KabbalahProject.com, spelled the same way as you see Kabbalah here in Science of Kabbalah. I have other teachings on here. And as always, I would ask that you like and share these videos. If you're enjoying it, please reach out to us. You can reach out to Rav Dror or to Rod or to myself and let us know how you like what we're doing. And you can also tell us what you'd like to hear us talk about, and we'd be happy to include that in future.
Also, I'd just like to say,
in the YouTube comments, maybe that's what you wanted to mention.
Yes, sir. If they go to the website, nativonline.org, there's a place for you to send me a message. Just go directly there, and I'd be glad to call you, chat with you, whatever you would like to answer your questions. Thank you, sir.
Great. Yashar Koach. Thank you, everyone, so much for your friendship, and all our followers. Thank you so much for being and attending those wonderful classes. Bezat Hashem, a great surprise for next week. And Tuesday, same time, same place. And may Hashem bless us all with great happiness, true inner faith and health and wealth and all good things that are needed and required for the completion of our mission and the mission of all our beloved ones with us. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Later on.